What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Last Word Sports Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Scott Caverts, and we're going to be diving into some predictions for the NFL playoff games this upcoming weekend. So last week in the wild card round, it was pretty crazy, lots of upsets. So we've got a lot of 6 seeds playing this week, so the spreads are pretty big. But tonight I'm just going to take you through one game. Tennessee Titans at Baltimore Ravens, 6 seed versus 1 seed in the AFC. So let's get started. All right, so the Ravens are favorites by 9.5 points. And to be honest with you, that makes a lot of sense. The Ravens are 14-2. They're probably the best team in the NFL. They've been phenomenal all season long. Their defense has been great. Their offense has been great. They've got the MVP of the league, Lamar Jackson. They're the first team in NFL history to average both 200 yards per game, rushing and passing in the season. So they're phenomenal. The Titans are only 9-7, but at the same time, Titans started 2-4. Well, they're actually 10-7 now that they beat the Patriots in Foxborough. So shout out to Derrick Henry for single-handedly carrying the Titans offense last week. But the point is, the Titans' 10-7 record, don't let it deceive you. They're a very good football team. I want to say they're 8-3 in their last 11 games. They've been playing phenomenal since Ryan Tannehill was inserted into the starting lineup. Super explosive offense and a bend-don't-break defense that can play very well. The defense showed up big against the Patriots last week. Tannehill and the offense had some struggles in Tannehill's first postseason game, but they just rode those legs of Derrick Henry to a massive victory. So, at the end of the day, the spread is Ravens by 9.5, and I'm really torn here because I like the Titans a lot. And I actually made a video on why I think the Titans are Super Bowl contenders. The Titans have been playing really good football. They just upset the greatest coach and the greatest quarterback of all time on the road. And so I want to say that I like the Titans here. Derrick Henry sat out in Week 16. He's their Titans running back, right? He finished the season as the rushing yards leader in the entire NFL, so he's phenomenal. He sat out in Week 15 against the Saints, and the Titans lost that game 28-38. He kind of had some nagging leg injuries. He came back the next week, had 211 rushing yards against the Texans, and something like 184 rushing yards against the Patriots. So he's just been feasting the last 2 weeks. He's really hot. At the same time, the Baltimore Ravens have a really strong defense, especially against the pass. They've got Marcus Peters. They've got Marlon Humphrey. They've got Earl Thomas III. Those guys are locked down. And Earl Thomas himself said, hey, we want Ryan Tannehill to throw the ball a lot, air it out. We'll beat the Titans if that's what happens. Now, I think Tannehill is a phenomenal quarterback. This season, he actually led the NFL in passer rating, and he threw only 22 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. So very, very strong play from him. He didn't play for the first 6 games of the season, too. So that was on only 10 games. But Tannehill last week against the Patriots was very underwhelming. He was something like 7-15. He only had like 80 passing yards or so. He had a nice throw on a touchdown pass and then just kind of didn't do much for the rest of the night. Tannehill is huge off of play action, and he's great in pushing the ball downfield. Usually he didn't show it off against the Patriots, but he leads the league in yards per attempt as well. So he's slinging it down the field usually. But at the same time, his weak numbers against the Patriots may be deceiving because the Patriots have one of the best defenses in the NFL, especially passing-wise. But the Ravens, just like the Patriots, struggle to stop the run. Now, even though from a purely statistical standpoint, it may look like the Ravens are good against the run because their defense only allows 93.4 rushing yards per game, which is the 5th best number in the NFL. Their defense has actually been gashed at times, and that's kind of where they get let up. The thing is, the Ravens' offense has been so phenomenal this season, just so prolific, the number 1 scoring offense in the league, and the first offense ever to average 200 rushing and passing, Lamar Jackson MVP, just a great year for the offense. That the defense has benefited. They haven't had to play. They haven't had to stay on the field as much. You know, they've gotten into situations where other teams are down a ton of points, had to throw the ball a lot so they get picks. I think the defense in a close game is not as strong as you'd like them to be. They're still very good. And we saw it back, I know this was way back, when the Browns were actually considered Super Bowl contenders, but the Browns went into M&T Bank Stadium and beat the Baltimore Ravens. Nick Chubb in that game had something like 180 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. They just got gashed, even though Baker Mayfield didn't play that well. So that's the one weakness for the Ravens, and that's the strength for the Titans, is Derrick Henry is just a bull. The guy is unlike any other running back in the league. These days, you see all these running backs like Christian McCaffrey who are super quick and elusive. He's strong too, but he's probably like 5'11", catches a ton of passes out of the backfield. Derrick Henry is not going to catch any passes against the Ravens. Derrick Henry is just a bull. The guy is a bell cow back. He's something like 6'5", 250. I mean, he just plows through defenders. Like, defensive backs run away from this dude. They just do not want to tackle him. At the end of the day, as much as I like the Titans, I like their offense. I think their defense is solid and they play really hard, and I love what their coach is doing in Mike Vrabel. I just think the Ravens are too talented, too well coached, and just a better team. If you're picking this game straight up, you have to go Baltimore. I could see Tennessee bringing the upset, especially with how the Ravens have let running backs like Nick Chubb run all over them. I think when they played the Niners, Raheem Mostert had 146 rushing yards on 19 carries, so they can get run against. But the Ravens are just too powerful. They've won 12 straight games. They beat the New England Patriots by 17 points. They beat the Houston Texans, who are still in the playoffs. They're one of the final 8 teams. They beat them 41-7. They beat the San Francisco 49ers, who are probably the second best team in the NFL. The Ravens are just too hot. If you look at their offense is number 1 in the NFL in points per game with 33.2. They're second in the NFL in yards per game. They're first in the NFL in rushing yards per game. They can juice the clock late in games. Lamar is one of the most accurate passers ever for his age. He can kill you with both his legs or his arm. Their defense is third in the NFL in points per game allowed. They're sixth in passing yards per game and fifth in rushing yards per game. They can do it all. They have a head coach who's won the Super Bowl before and who's super experienced. Great. He loves his team, and he finds ways to utilize players uniquely and make sure that he's working to his team's benefits. He's not trying to put a round peg in a square hole. You know, he'll say, hey, we've got Lamar Jackson. We're going to run the ball a ton of times a game. A ton of coaches said, I don't want to draft Lamar Jackson. He doesn't fit my scheme. John Harbaugh said, let's draft Lamar Jackson and make a scheme around him. That was great. He's probably going to win Coach of the Year. Ravens have the best record in the NFL. They've beaten all the other good teams. They're just the best team. Lamar Jackson has had an incredible season. Led the NFL in touchdown passes, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. On top of that, he was one of the best runners in the league. He had 1,200 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns on 6.9 yards per carry. The dude is just absurd. He's practically unfair. The one thing I could see hurting the Ravens is their rest. They haven't played, the Ravens starters, guys like Lamar. It's been like 20, 21 days since they've played because they sat and then they had a bye and then they've had a full week of practice before their game. So it's been 3 weeks. And 3 weeks without football, you know, you can fall out of shape a little bit, lose a little bit of your rhythm. But I just think this Ravens team is too good. So if you're picking against the spread, go Tennessee, take the 9.5 points. They're a very good football team. They can keep it close. If you're picking straight up, you have to go Baltimore. There's really no other pick here. Baltimore should be favored to win the Super Bowl in every game along the way. Although we will see what Kansas City hopefully has to say about that next week. Alrighty, so that's all, folks. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Scott Caverts. This has been The Last Word.